Tennessee, David Tulis.
Russell Stroud, our news director, knows what excites me. He has given me a very, very valuable piece of paper. It is the $10 billion Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe banknote, $10 billion under the regime of former President Robert Mugabe. And it is worth a lot of money, right? It is, at the time of its issue, it was one of millions and millions of notes rushing off the presses in Europe, flown by cargo hold into Zimbabwe and at the Harare airport, and dumped out onto the streets so people could have money. There was a shortage of money in that country, and we have in the passing of the tax bill yesterday. President Trump will be signing it probably in January. We have a story that is this story, right? It's the same story as the one that afflicted Zimbabwe back in the early 2000s and in the late 1900s, and that was the rise of the paper money system, which all the reporting at the time hid and obscured how it is that we have mass inflation. Even today, we have only veiled references to the source of inflation, the source of the bubble, the balloon in credit, and the tax bill is part of this story, and it is an untenable measure. However you may want to critique its allocation of favors, it is an untenable measure because the federal government, the national power, has a debt past $20 trillion and obligations probably past 120 or 150 trillion dollars. And it's all possible because no one believes that the word dollar means a coin with about 400 grains of 90% fine silver. That's what a dollar really is. But we have these sort of ersatz, phony, fake dollars created, ejaculated, if you will, from the banking sector, the Federal Reserve System, and all banks, all fractional reserve lenders, whether banks or credit unions or savings and loans, do the same thing, monetizing debts and passing them off as valuable as currency. That's where the currency comes from. It comes from that pool. Just of course, it's printed, different from the digital versions. This is David Tulis. We are the all-new Nooga Radio, all-new Nooga Radio, and I do appreciate you giving me just a minute of your time. 92.7 and 95.3 HD4. HD means simply high definition of channel 4, and that signal reaches out about 60 miles, a powerful, mega powerful platform, all brought to you here by Nooganomics.com, the unobtrusive website that's not very popular, not heavily trafficked, and that's because it is intended only for the people who matter. And you know that very few people really matter. Maybe you'll be one at some point. I hope, if not now, mattering now, that maybe you will matter in the future. We are Chattanooga's new favorite home for news and talk. And my name is David Tulis. I was 25 years, almost 25 years at the Chattanooga Times-Free Press as an editor, a copy editor, making the business staff, business editors look good, and left there to pursue writing on the internet, of course, which is really not a profitable goal, and then getting, by God's providence, into the radio business. And I really appreciate you giving me just a couple minutes of your time. If you tell a friend about my show here, David Tulis, then I will double my listenership, because I'm here for you. You alone are my listener, and I thank you for giving me just that 1 minute of your time. My goal here, among others, I have several goals, but one important one is to just encourage you to be more testosteronal. And so, sometimes when I meet business people, I'm talking about you, my listener, and trying to figure out if that business owner has any business, any right, effectively, to talk to you about his business. I sometimes say, well, on my show, I direct my discourse and take calls from men. And that's the number, by the way, is 800-8949, 800-8949. And I take calls from men and address my analysis for men, partly because they are often, not you, right, but other people are often atestosteronal. They just don't have a manliness about them like they used to, right? There are no Davy Crockett spirits anymore. Don't detect me Daniel Boone type spirits anymore. Now, there is one exception, and that's our future mayor. His name is Hanson Melvin. Hanson Melvin, future mayor of Chattanooga, who stood his ground against police abuse, and hopefully will be compensated for his damages made against him by perjury, by abusive policing, and by a police conspiracy that still has been left unmolested by the new chief. This conspiracy took place under Fred Fletcher, the former chief of police, and has maintained its hegemony, its control of things, its silence. The blue integrity line there, the fidelity among faithful officers to themselves by the new chief, David Roddy. Now, the goal is for you to stand up, right? You to stand up to circumstances, for you to have a perhaps more loco-centric perspective. And that's what I'd like to talk about is, can we make Chattanooga better? Can we make Hamilton County better with you in the middle of some part of it, right? You, my listener, in some part of it, either in business or charity, or maybe you're not a churchgoer, but maybe if you were in the life of the Christian church, which has the moral authority to make changes in the way things are going in Chattanooga and in Hamilton County. If only its adherents would realize that God condemns many of the things that they, as his worshipers, simply overlook as the norm, right? They look at the cash bail system as normative. They look at policing as normative. They look at inflationary currency, like the $10 billion Zimbabwe dollar note that I'm holding in my hand here, as normative, right? Because it's normative. It's in a way somehow neutral, and God does not condemn it. God does not require them to say or do anything about it. That's just the way things are, right? And we believe in Romans 13. We should obey our masters, and whatever the masters do, that's their responsibility before God. We just have to just kind of obey and hope that they don't order us to do something against our private religious convictions. That's about as far as most Christians will go in envisioning themselves as standing up to lawlessness by those who claim to have some authority in the law itself. Now, standing up is something that Kelvin Cochran has done. You know who I'm talking about. He is the former chief of police in Atlanta. And yesterday, a federal district court ruled that Atlanta government violated his constitutional rights by firing him because he published. Get this, he published in a book his views about godly marriage, his godly views, I should say, about marriage. He was fired in January of 2015, and they took issue, these important good people in Atlanta Town Hall, with a passage in a book. The book is called "Told You That You Were Who Told You That You Were Naked." That was the title of his book as a study. And he says, Kelvin Cochran says in that volume, that God created sex within the bounds of marriage for the purpose of procreation. That is the biblical perspective, that marriage is owned by God and that men cannot steal it from each other, right? Men and women cannot steal it from each other unless sanctioned by God, unless approved by God, made holy by God through marriage, right? And even ungodly people have holy sex in marriage. That's the perspective that Kelvin Cochran enunciated, and that got him into trouble. And so there was a poofter on the city council who complained, and then of course everybody was indignant at this position, which is the position of the civilized man, right? The civilized man who defends marriage and defends fidelity within marriage, and the seventh commandment. The seventh commandment being the hedge God puts around marriage when he says, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." It is a commandment for purity of thought, purity of actions. It is the commandment that makes men satisfied with being single, that gives grace to men who are married to satisfy their partners in love, and to be satisfied with the woman, the wife of one's youth, right? That in marriage and by under that commandment, men are grateful to God for being able to make love, right? And have all the joys of love, which perhaps the best of all in lovemaking is the fact that children come from it. That is the new life in love. And so Cochran, he fires back, right? He sues the city, and here he has won. Think about what that means for you. Can you do the same thing? Can you, my listener, be courageous like Kelvin Cochran? That's my question for you. The government can't force its employees to get its permission before engaging in free speech. This is senior counsel here, Kevin Thurio from Alliance Defending Freedom, who defended this case, prosecuted this case. In addition, as this court found, the city can't leave such decisions to the whims of government officials. This ruling benefits not only Chief Cochran, but also other employees who want to write books or speak about matters unrelated to work. Atlanta can no longer force them to get permission or deny them permission just because certain officials disagree with the views expressed. Right? Why wouldn't a gay person be? Why are gay people always offended? Homosexuals are just offended all the time. That's why their system is untenable. It is anti-capitalist. It is a burning out of the man, not just in the activity, but it's a burning out of the man and a burning out of the culture. If culture is homosexualized, it will have to collapse. It necessarily has to collapse. And we are, of course, in our 250th year, just about as an empire, the United States empire. And all empires have that as their cutoff date. No empire, according to a major study, which I have not reread lately, does not last past. While Cochran is grateful for the court's decision, he's shocked he got fired in the first place. And here's Kelvin Cochran. He says, most Americans are astonished that in America you could be terminated from employment for expressing your thoughts and beliefs. And he's talking here to the Christian Broadcasting Network News. We need to take courage, especially as we see the day drawing near, to say, no, our God will provide for us and we will not be intimidated. We will not worship Caesar. We have only one Lord, he says, and his name is Jesus, and we believe his words. That is words of encouragement for you, my listener. Whether you're a Christian or not is not in the point here, right? The point is that you have a right to do something and that you need to exercise your rights. You need to exercise your rights. And I would suggest always with grace, right? You always exercise your rights with grace, and you want to always be useful to people and have your words be useful to people. And this is David Tulis. And also good news in state politics. Pody wins the election against Mary Alice Carfy. It's a special election in the middle part of the state, District 17. Mark Pody was a state representative and ran for the seat vacated by May Beavers, who is the leading candidate for governor in Tennessee. The vote was very close, however. And what's remarkable is it's in a district that went a 50% margin for Trump. Trump won by 50 points, 72% to 22% in the national election a couple years ago. So here we have a vote that doesn't reflect that imbalance in favor of the conservative sort of anti-establishment argument. Pody got 5,990 votes, and Mary Alice Carfy got 5,682. So it's very close votes, about 308 in difference. And that's important to consider because Mark Pody, like May Beavers and others who are kind of at the leading edge of defending and promoting constitutional government, he will now be in the Senate. And so we have that benefit where if the constitutional perspective holds sway, then evil laws are overturned. If the court doesn't overturn them first, I'm thinking of the need for constitutional carry in our state passed by legislation. Of course, Bill Haslam, the Republican head, does not care about constitutional carry. He does not care about the right to bear arms, period. Okay, he doesn't. No matter what his party says or what he says, he is indifferent to the abuse of the existing statute, which would be overturned by a constitutional carry provision that both May Beavers and Mark Pody have favored. Now, there's a story out of Memphis I think I need to mention. It's the removal of Confederate statues downtown. What happened is that the city council in this largely majority black city voted to approve the sale of two parks. One is called Hill Science Park, and another is called Fourth Bluff Park. These possessions city possessions to a private organization. The group is called Memphis Greenpeace. And in one park is General Nathan Bedford Forrest, who is a whiz. He was also a wizard in the early Klan days, which was an effort to defend the southern ways. It was really against the kind of anarchy that the North carpetbaggers brought to the South. So there's a statue for him. Then there's also a statue that depicts Jefferson Davis, the Confederate president. So for $1,000 each, this group bought these properties, and now, since they're private, not publicly owned, they proceeded last night, according to Ryan Poe at USA Today Network, to take these statues down. Health Sciences Park and Memphis Park have been sold. Mayor Jim Strickland says operations on those sites tonight are being conducted by a private entity and are compliant with the law. We will have further updates later tonight. So in the dark, these statues are lifted off their plinths, their pedestals, and removed. Councilmember Janice Fuller-Love, who voted for the ordinance, said it was a crazy, crazy, crazy night. It's really going down in history that this is the night they're going to take the statues down. It is a historic moment. There's a quote from the pastor of the Abyssinian Missionary Baptist Church in Memphis, Reverend Earl Fisher. This is a step in the right direction. I'm not sure it's time to take a victory lap quite yet, but he says this is definitely something to celebrate. We fought long and hard. We salute wonderful leadership, all the people who have been part of taking down 901 over the past several months, and all of the forerunners that were fighting these statues long before many of us graduated from college. Now, what is one to make of this development? Well, I understand why black people resent these figures, these monuments of men past. They are of historical interest, but as one person quoted by the USA Today Network says, they went up at the time when the Klan was really very strong socially back in the 20s, and it was a strongly racist sort of anti-black organization, unlike the initial Klan. Initially, the Klan was not racist at all. It was really more against the Yankees. It was really more a defense of Southern families and towns against Yankee militias. There were Yankee militias that roamed the countryside in the South, wreaking havoc on all kinds of people, black and white alike, because the Yankees weren't really pro-black. They were not favorable to blacks generally. They were viewed blacks with great disdain. And in the North, blacks were highly, highly disliked and disregarded. And in fact, slavery ended last in the United States in northern states, with General Grant probably being one of the last people to give up slaves he owned under the new constitutional amendment. City of Chattanooga Police Department, according to 2 or 3 outlets this morning, has a safe zone for online sales. Now, this is a good idea. And in a way, it offers a kind of gloss in favor of surveillance. Now, what happens often when people have an online deal, like say on Craigslist, you want to purchase a bike with someone you don't know, you're a man and the buyer's a woman, or other way around, and one party says, well, could we meet in a neutral location? Well, usually you meet in a parking lot. But here, now, the parking lot in front of the Amnicola Highway Police Services Center has a designated area where there's a camera watching who goes there. And the data is kept for a week or so in case there's a fight or a dispute or some kind of miscreancy. And it's painted off, and the camera's there rolling all the time. So you can have your exchange of your online traded thing, or you have a child custody swap, right? Dad gets the children for the weekend, and the ex-wife meets him there to have that exchange. So if there's anything that goes wrong, it takes place there. And it is a way of, as I say, justifying surveillance. And surveillance is something that we're told to be used to, expect it. And policing itself, of course, is taking advantage of what's called data-driven or data-driven investigations, data-driven projective policing, where you project power, you project the presence of the officer in a place where your software calculates there may be a drug deal here, or there may be a fight between rival gang members there. And so we have surveillance cameras always running, and we can watch people. Right? We can watch them where they go. It's not as perfected here, of course, as in other places such as China. There are major cities in China with 3 or 4 million in population that have hundreds and even thousands of cameras going. And as we read earlier this week, you can have a person's face injected into the database, and he be found within 7 or 8 minutes by the officers once an alert is put onto that particular face. So that is sort of the future. And the question is, how can people be private? How can we have unmolested, unsurveyed, undisturbed transactions? Here, the sale of some non-weapon object conducted in front of the police department might be a safe thing, might be prudent to do that. But the larger picture is surveillance is something that policing wants us to be used to. The city government wants us to be used to. David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD.